What's up, Bruins fans? Welcome to Bruins Diehards, your source for all things Boston Bruins. Today on the show, we're talking about Bruins' huge overtime win last night over the Buffalo Sabres. James Hagens makes his pro debut, and now he can't go back to BC. Will we see James Hagens in a Bruins uniform this year? Do the Bruins make the playoffs? And why is the Bruins fan base so hard on their goaltending? Joining me today is a first time on Diehards, is a Hawaiian pizza connoisseur, the Bruins Matrix himself, Mr. Ty Anderson from 985 The Sports Hub. Welcome to Bruins Diehards, Ty.
What's going on, Court? How we doing today?
The snow is melting. I'm feeling great. And as a Blue Jay fan, I get to watch a home Blue Jays game tomorrow, which is it's kind of nice.
I mean, hey, listen, I went to the Sky Dome, Rogers Center, whatever it's called.
We call it Sky Dome.
Okay, cool. All right, awesome. I went in there one night when I was back. I was in Toronto in the summer, and the roof was closed, and I felt like I was in a spaceship. And I was like, "This is the wildest thing," because we don't have domes here, like we don't have retractable roofs or anything like that. So I felt so weird being in that building. Cool building though. I liked it. There's nothing better, in my opinion, than when the Blue Jays are a good baseball team. I think that building is rocking in the playoffs every year. It's such a fun thing to be a part of. You know, I live in Boston. I'm a Cubs fan. I like the Red Sox too, but I'm a Cubs fan. It's fun. I think April, I mean, I know we're in March right now, but I think April is maybe the sneaky best sports month of the entire year. I am a firm believer in that because of baseball, NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs. If you like Masters, you get the Masters there for golf.
Very good point.
And then you have, baseball's in full swing. And so starting earlier is always weird. Like I'm still kind of not in full baseball mode, but it is good. You mentioned the snow melting. We had outside of my apartment, we had that gross, the snow when it gets like nasty and like it's like covered in like dirt and like exhaust fumes. We had that. It's finally gone. So I feel like I'm a much happier person now as well because of that.
Well, yeah, because we can get into the doldrums of the winter where it can destroy you. Because like this year, I know we've had a long winter. I know you've had a long winter, and it's just like the fact that friends of mine were like, "Hey, what are we doing Friday night? Like, let's watch the baseball game." I'm like, "Oh my god, it's almost summer!" Like, oh,
Right.
thank God! Like, because the Jays did so well last year, and I agree with you. The Sky Dome is a lot like, geez, listening to that Sabres crowd last night, like that arena must have been amazing to be at. Those Sabres fans deserve to be in the playoffs this year. But like we call the Sky Dome the concrete graveyard because it's a lot of concrete, but they've renovated. I don't know if you've been there since the renovations. It's a totally different stadium now. Like they have like walk-up bars where you just grab your drink and then it just charges your phone. It's the weirdest thing ever. Like,
Wow.
yeah. It's kind of awesome though. At the same
Yeah.
time, not a lot of lines. And then they have this whole section in the outfield where it's just a giant party because it's standing room for everybody, and it's just anybody can go there. There's no tickets, so everybody gets there early. I'm very curious. All the tickets have been jacked up this year, but I'm wondering if it'll aggregate down. So I didn't even buy. I'm not spending 150 Canadian to go to a baseball game right now. But for you guys, I guess if you came up here, it's like $50. So whatever.
Yeah. So I think when we went, it was 2019, I want to say. So
Oh yeah, so it
it's
hasn't
been a
been
hot
changed.
minute.
Yeah. So the stadium is totally different now.
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
totally. The outside looks the exact same.
Right.
The inside looks totally different. I think they want to try and get away from everybody still calling it the Sky Dome, which we will all do for the rest of our lives. It's just anybody that grew up in Toronto, it is what it is. But
Right. I think it's a better name personally.
way better.
And the other part of it too is that Canada, I believe, has like 7 stadiums named Rogers something. We got to cut down on how many Rogers there are. There can only be 1 or 2, I feel like.
There's like 3 Rogers arenas, Rogers stadiums. We even have a Rogers Stadium for music, and we have a Rogers Stadium for baseball. It's the worst. Well, they own everything. It's just like another sponsor that I laugh. So when the Leaf game was happening the other day, and the Bruins lose to one of the worst teams in the league, mind you, they've won 2 games in a row, and it kind of works out in our favor. But the announcers, every time the Bruins play the Leafs and they're in Boston, they go out of their way to say that the Leafs are playing at the Toronto Dominion Garden every single time. I always laugh when they do it. I always laugh. They can never say TD. They will all, even though I am a TD Bank customer, I do not call it Toronto Dominion Bank ever. But I do laugh that every single time the Leafs play the Bruins in Boston, I find it that they all go out of their way to do it. They always say that live from the Toronto Dominion Bank Garden every time. I do laugh.
It'd be funny if they somehow change that name one day, and then all of a sudden Toronto starts winning at the Garden in the playoffs like every year. You're like, wait a minute, like that was the curse. Like,
Well, no, that'll never happen. They'll never win.
I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't think
Yeah.
it'll ever happen either. But yeah, I feel like that's always like that gets pulled out of the bag of tricks by a Leafs fan whenever they're arguing my mentions, and I'm like, why? Why does that matter? Whatever, like that's how little material they have, given the state of the rivalry the last 10 years or 11 years, whatever it's been now. That gets pulled out quite a bit. I feel like in the mentions by like the lowest common denominator in terms of like the worst trash talk.
Well, yeah, I say this to my friends in Toronto all the time. You just don't know how to win, so you just don't even know how to chirp. And so they won the other day, and all my buddies were just like, "Oh man!" I was like, "Yeah, this is good." Like we were watching. My daughter was practice, and I was watching the game from the rink because that's here in Canada. You do two things at once. You watch hockey twice. So while my daughter's practice is going on, there's TVs in the arena showing the Bruins Leafs game, and when the Leafs started winning, I was like, darn it. I'm so frustrated because it was like, I look at the standings and people that listen to diehards here, I'm like, I'm okay if the Bruins make the playoffs, but I'm also okay if they don't make the playoffs. So I look at it this way. I'm like, I kind of want the better picks. Like Dom Tiano's got me all on the, oh, wow, Florida's got to start winning some hockey games too, because we don't want them. We want to be able the Bruins to get 2 first-round picks back-to-back years. So the Leafs one, I think the Bruins are pretty good. The Leafs would pretty much have to like lose every game because the teams below them are that bad now, and winning 2 games in a row kind of like sparked the Bruins to possibly get a good pick there. I posted the standings this morning. It'd be really hard for them. It is hilarious though that the Leafs are ahead of the Nashville Predators, who are in a playoff spot.
Wild. It's unbelievable how I don't feel like I feel like I've never seen it this skewed. Right, where you have the Pacific Division and it's awful. It's so bad. Like you have, I think, I want to say all 3 teams have, technically speaking, losing records if you factor in the overtime losses. I'm not sure about the top team, but I know like the second and third place team do.
Yeah, Nashville on the road is 14, 15, and 6. Like they're like
it's wretched. It's absolutely
the Bruins
wretched.
have a better road record than the Nashville Predators,
which is hilarious to think about because the Bruins have been so bad on the road. The Maple Leaf situation kind of reminds me a little bit of the Bruins a year ago, where that Bruins pick probably doesn't fall that low if they don't have that 10-game losing streak, in March that really was like, all right, now you're really in it, right? But think about that sort of spell they had to go on to solidify themselves to getting a top 10 pick. It feels like, to your point, like Toronto would have to do something like that, and I feel like they still have enough talent that keeps them above water some nights. Like that, the game on Tuesday at the Garden, like Tavares had a great game. It's like this guy can still play. Matty Knies can still play. And then you have some players that are clearly trying to play for, maybe their own standing in Toronto or their own future in the league. Like it's hard. It's really hard to have a manufactured tank when you have natural talent on the roster. Like I've always said that. Like that's why I always pick like the Bruins to not be a bottom 5 team. When people say like, oh, they're going to be bad this year, I'm like, you don't realize how bad you have to be legitimately heinous. Like you have to almost go out of your way to build your team that way. Because if you have even an ounce of natural talent, here and there, like you're going to win more than you're going to lose in this league, or you're going to get points more than you're going to fail to get points in this league. And I think Toronto's a great example of that right now.
Yeah, and Toronto didn't dump at the trade deadline like the Bruins did last year. Like the Bruins, like people got to understand what Don Sweeney did last year at the trade deadline. He traded away the leadership core besides McAvoy and Pasternak. So he took the heart of that locker room, was like, have a nice day. Right. He obviously knew it would deflate the living daylights out of the team, but it kind of was, that was the plan. Like that they, plan executed. They got JamesHagens, who we'll talk about later. The Leafs this year, they didn't really do that. Right. The fans here complained about their coach. They got rid of it. They brought in Berube, and he has not been the answer, because you can't have a tough coach when you still have a soft team. And then they got rid of Mitch Marner, who was one of their best defensive forwards and would score 100 points every year, and then expected that Matthew Knies and like a bunch of fourth liners would make up that offense and defense. And it never materialized. And I've been saying this till I'm blue in the face. Austin Matthews is a very gifted goal scorer, but he is a piece, and he's not the thing that can lead you to the promised land. Leafs radio today is already like, he's being traded. Like it is, he's gone. They want him gone. And it is what it is. But the good news is, right down the road, there's a place called Buffalo, New York, which is, it's closer to me than like some places in Ontario. I can get to Buffalo in like an hour and a half. It's fantastic. One of the best places to watch hockey in the NHL. I'll say this. I used to go there to watch almost all my Bruins games because it was cheaper. It's cheaper to go and drive to Buffalo here in Canada than to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs game at Scotiabank.
Wow.
Cheaper to drive, to buy my ticket, even in with the exchange rate, to pay for food, pay for drinks, eat before the game, and then come back. It's still cheaper. And that's to get even a lower bowl seat. So a lower bowl seat, the upper bowl seat here in Toronto is around $150 Canadian. So $100 Canadian, $100 American. If we want to do like the math and make everybody understand, in Buffalo, I can get a seat in like the 200 level, like mid bowl, for about the exact same price Canadian.
Wow.
And you're pretty much center ice watching the game. Driving is whatever it is, but like drinks are cheaper. Like it just doesn't make sense. And in fact, Buffalo is the only arena in the NHL that, I don't know if you noticed before that game, they played the Canadian national anthem.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had to Google why they did that, because I was like, what? The first time it happened, first time I noticed it was like probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I was like, why are they doing this? And then I had to Google it, and I was like, oh, that actually makes sense now. I'm not gonna lie, I like Buffalo, and I know that's like a weird thing to say because Buffalo is kind of a punching bag for a lot of people here in Boston. Going to Buffalo, the city, I actually don't mind Buffalo. So I've never been to a Sabres game. When I've gone, it's been in the summer. Like we would do road trips. We would drive from like Boston to Chicago or Boston to Ohio, depending on where we were going. And we would kind of cut through Buffalo on the way there. And I always liked my time there. The Sabres, like I'm not gonna lie, part of me has been rooting for a Bruins Sabres playoff matchup so that I can experience that crowd, because you watch it on TV. That game last night, electric crowd. The game, the Sabres Lightning game like 2 weeks ago, great crowd. It feels like Buffalo being good is good for the NHL.
Agreed.
A firm belief of mine. Just like I feel that way about Philly. I think Philly being a good team is good for the NHL. You want these markets, these passionate markets, to have meaningful hockey and things to root and care about. And you don't want a team to be in the mud for 15 years in any league, let alone hockey. I think any team being out of the playoffs for, it's been 14 years, 15 years, whatever it's been. Too long, way too long. So it's good that they should be back in. And I kind of want to see Bruins and Sabres. I'm not going to lie. I think these games have been good. I think these are good games between these teams.
I agree. And I also, after watching last night's game, I thought the exact same thing. Like the Bruins make a comeback and, they shot themselves in the foot again to even get to where the Buffalo Sabres had the lead. But then they did. They were resilient. That second line, I don't know, best line in the Atlantic right now. Like, it's just unbelievable. I can't believe no one at the beginning of the year was going to say a line of Pavel Zacha, Casey Middlestat, and Victor Arvidsson were going to be the best line on the Boston Bruins. And they are. I do like the Husadinov, Fraser Minton, Pasternak. Like, Minton and Pasta and seem to be developing some real chemistry. Like that pass last night to Pasternak's goal from Minton. Like Pasternak instantly was pointing at him. And I already noticed the Husadinov and Pasta thing. Like, he loves Husadinov. He loves that guy, because I think one of the things that both Husadinov and Minton bring for Pasta is, and I say this, and I want to say this without people automatically saying I'm comparing him to Patrice Bergeron. I'm just saying the style. Minton plays a two-way game. Pasta needs that center that can provide speed, also play that two-way game, but also be able to help out on the perimeter and get pucks to him and be there if he's going to be in the slot and like receive and give passes. I'm not saying Minton is Bergeron, but he suits that style of play. And I think Husadinov sits that style of Marchand, of that speed. The guy that goes and digs pucks out in the corner, does all the dirty work for him, which takes a lot of pressure off Pasternak's game. And it also takes a lot of pressure off his knees and his hips. Let's be totally honest here. So I think that line is working, but that second line, they don't play last night. The Bruins, they don't win that hockey game.
Right. And to your point about the first line right now with Minton and Husadinov, I think the thing with Minton that helps him with Pasternak versus somebody like Elias Lindholm is that you can see that Minton has that second gear, right? Like that sort of, okay, I need to get up here, so I'm gonna effort my way into getting up here. Not to say that Elias Lindholm doesn't bring an effort. I just find that Lindholm has trouble getting to that second gear, that next gear, to win that puck, to get it to Pasternak in the slot or to wherever. And I feel like that's where Minton, perhaps just being younger, less miles on the legs, maybe even healthier, I feel like he's able to do that to be more of what Bergeron was. And I know what you're saying. I know you're not comparing him to Bergeron, but like stylistically, like you can see it. You can totally see it. And I feel like that's been really helping Pastrnak with when we talk about that Minton and Pastrnak connection. I feel like Minton's ability to find that next gear quicker, in shift than Elias Lindholm is a big reason why it's looked better of late than it did maybe earlier in the year when they first went to it back in November.
Do you think because of how well this top six is working right now, it's hurting Geekie? Because I think
Mm,
Geekie is a top six hockey player. And I think you alluded to it with Elias Lindholm. I think he's still injured. I think he's
mhm.
playing hurt and there's not much you can do. I think he's got one of those injuries where he can get the shot before every game, the quarter zone. And by the third period, he looks slower. I think is the best way to. I would love to look at the NHL Edge numbers in the next couple of weeks when they come out because they always do the aggregate. I would
Mhm.
love to see if he's lost some speed since the Olympics, and because I feel like Geekie was forcing a lot of passes against the Buffalo Sabres. Man, he had way too many giveaways that I would
Yeah.
like to. But I think it's more of him. Geekie is a very superstitious player. For everybody listening, Geekie like tries to change things up. And a couple nights ago, he didn't wear a helmet in the warm up. Like he just did. He was trying to figure stuff out.
Mhm.
He's a very superstitious guy, and he is struggling with Elias Lindholm. And I truly believe like normally some of the against the Leafs, he had some chances. Stolarz robbed him.
Yeah.
Normally those go in. So I don't think he was probably hard on himself there. But I think in that game, even though the Bruins won last night, I would think that Geekie was a little hard on himself last night.
Yeah, I would agree, and I do agree with you about Lindholm. For what it's worth, I've had people, because I've mentioned it on my show that I think he's hurt, and I've had people kind of push back on it and say, no, I think he's pretty healthy. People that would know more than me in this regard, so he might be healthier, but I agree. I don't think he has the same burst. He had that game in Montreal. I know second leg of a back to back for them, but he had a couple of shifts in the third period where the legs just weren't there. Right. And you could almost tell that he's trying to accelerate. This is Lindholm, not Geeky. And it's like it wasn't happening for him for whatever reason. And so I do think he's hurt. I mean, I almost would hope that he's hurt. And this isn't just who he is now, because if this is who he is now, that's a bummer for the Boston Bruins because they're going to need more out of him. And it's really interesting because like Geeky, I don't know if it's just because like he's gone through this and he snapped out of it. I don't worry about him as much as I maybe should. Like I know that he's been cold, but he's the kind of guy that he gets one goal and now it's off to the races, right? And you just kind of hope it all times out perfectly. And he's doing that in the playoffs, right? Where maybe snaps out of the cold streak in game 79. And then you get, prime hot stick Geeky in the playoffs. But I don't worry about him because I feel like the effort is still there, right? Like we kind of acknowledge his shortcomings. Like we acknowledge that he's at his best when he's posting up and just absolutely blasting shots on goal. As long as he's still doing that, I feel relatively confident in his game, in his ability to snap out of it. I feel like when he went on that really prolonged drought back in, I want to say it was January, perhaps, maybe mid January. I can't remember exactly. The season is a blur. He wasn't shooting. He was like looking for his line mates. He was passing, and it's like, oh, dude, you're wide open. Fire that on goal. So my feeling is that so long as Geeky is shooting the puck, I'm not worried because I think he'll snap out of it. Agree with you. I think he has a natural talent to snap out of it. So as long as he can keep firing, I'm in a good spot with him. Once he stops shooting, that's when I'm like, might be in trouble here. And so I think with Geeky, I'm not worried. With Lindholm, it is how he looks right now that's worrying me.
Yeah, because it was interesting because in the Toronto game, he's shooting the puck. And then last night in Buffalo, he was second guessing himself and he was
Mhm.
forcing passes and they kept getting picked off and picked off. He would lose the puck going into the entry on the neutral zone. And I was just like, this is not him. But I agree with you. Like, I'm not worried about him. And it reminds me a lot of how fans used to get on Pasternak in his early years when I'm like, he's a goal scorer. Like, Geekie is what he is. He's a goal scorer. No one should ever be mad at a guy that gets you 30 plus goals every year and he's only making 5.5 million. Like, it
Right.
should just like get off the guy's back because he's gonna burn you like it's nobody's business online anyway. So do yourself a favor. But I have zero issues. I do think at some point you got to get him going, and maybe because I do notice that Sturm is giving him a couple shifts every now and then. Husadinov will not get out there as quicker, and he'll let Geeky take that extra little shift with Pasta. And it seems that maybe, and this is just me, because I think you need Geeky going if you're going into the playoffs. You have no choice. And I think Husadinov is the type of guy that he'll give you everything you got, no matter where you put him in the lineup. Like, I love the kid.
Right.
Like, and that's the other thing. Geekie's a kid. So I think at some point he's got to give Geekie a game, not a couple shifts, a game. Throw him up with Pasta so he knows that he can score again, because Pasta is probably the most underrated passer in the NHL. But he's shooting again because he's got Fraser Minton and Husadinov feeding him the puck. But I just look at the win last night and I see huge character win. I love that Pavel Zacha is having one of the best seasons he's ever had in his career. He's just playing phenomenal. I love the fact that Victor Arvidsson has got 20 goals, 4 20-goal scores, possibly 5 20-goal scores if Minton or Husadinov get there. They're kind of close. They probably will. That could give them, 6 by the end of the year, which is we haven't seen that in a really long time. I know you probably even know the number. But
I don't know. The 2022-23 season, like, threw me in a blender.
We had 5.
Okay.
We had 5 that year.
So that's the year that I'm always like, how many do they have? Because I know they were just a machine. They had so many records that I kind of forget what happened in 22-23. Like, oh, the first time they had this, first time they had that, because so many things happened that year.
Yeah, they had, I think Zacha got 19 goals.
Yeah, it was one away. Yeah.
So they had a very good year that year until they got to the playoffs. But it is what it is. But I look at everything it's like a perfect storm this year with the Boston Bruins. They've been, like, Charlie McAvoy's quote after the game, like, we believe everything, and we believe it in the room. And I see it. Like, Mason Lowry almost gets traded, and then all of a sudden it was like the greatest thing that ever happened to him. Like, that guy could never say that he doesn't look at social media, because, one, he's been playing like a champ since he pretty much was traded to the Calgary Flames, and then Anderson denied the trade. He's been playing great. I don't care that he got the penalty last night. Guys are going to get penalties. Right. Like, I said this to you before when we were talking about something else before the show. People are going to make mistakes. Like, if you're getting on Mason Lowry, and I saw the amount of tweets out there, like, Mason Lowry cost him the season. Nikita Zadorov leads the league in penalties.
Right.
You can't get mad at Mason Lowry for getting a penalty in the end of the year game when you've got guys that have cost you games throughout the year. So, like, I do find that interesting, but I love the fact that the Bruins have, they're 3 points up now. Like, it's not that I think the race is so tight that this is huge. They've got the tiebreaker against the Ottawa Senators. They got the tiebreaker against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Like, they got the tiebreaker against the New York Islanders, and they got the tiebreaker against the Detroit Red Wings. Like, that's pretty good. Like, I look at the standings right now, and I'm like, are they going to make the playoffs? Because I keep thinking they don't, but their percentages keep jumping real quick.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that works in their favor versus years where we saw them in these kind of fights and they fell out of it was that they've remained in control of their own destiny throughout the entire process here. And so long as you are in control of your own fate, I like what you can do. I like their core. I like Jeremy Swayman more than I like, say, John Gibson. And I think Gibson's been great, but I think Gibson is prone to falling off more than Swayman is. I like Pasternak and what they have up front more than I like what the Islanders have up front. And I like what they have up front. I trust what the Bruins can do more than them. I like Boston's defense more than I like Columbus's defense. Not a knock on Columbus's defense. They obviously have Zach Werenski, but I think pound for pound, piece for piece, I like Boston a little bit more. And so I feel like when I compare them versus the teams that are chasing them, I like X, Y, or Z that the Bruins possess more than the other team that I think could be important down the stretch here. I do think that the season may very well come down to those Boston versus Columbus games that we have. We have 2 more of those, I know. But I do feel like they've put themselves in a great spot. And, to your point, I don't know what to expect from this team. I don't think anyone can tell you with a straight face that they know what to expect from this team. I could see them going on a run to the conference finals, or I could see them losing in 6 games in the first round. Like they are that Jekyll and Hyde. I think they've addressed some of the issues that have plagued them. They've been better on the road. I think their battle level on the road has been a lot better. They're getting some results now to go with that. I think their power play concerns me because it did mask a lot of their issues offensively in the early part of the year. But when you have the second line, as you mentioned, going the way they're going, that sort of mitigates that a little bit. And so they are such a trick or treat kind of team, right? That I don't think any of us can sit here and say, like, we know for sure what they're going to do in the playoffs. But I think we can probably both agree that they have put themselves in a damn good spot to be in the playoffs, which I don't know how many of us were saying that beginning of the year. My hand up, my opening night prediction was that they were going to finish in 9th. I thought they were going to be the first team out. They're in right now. And so I think when you look at that, like, they found ways to will themselves into the conversation. And it comes back to what you mentioned, Charlie McAvoy. Like, they believe. It's not fraudulent. They all believe in what they're doing in that locker room.
Yeah, and you can actually see it. And I look at this roster, and the one thing that does give me solace is because their goaltending has been good. Both Korpisalo, I think Korpisalo played great last night. I think Swayman was the only reason the Bruins didn't get blown out of the water against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played great. Just as Sturm said, no one else did. So unfortunately, they lost the hockey game. But I look at their bottom six, and I look at what teams need in the playoffs, and I think the Bruins could be not. And I agree with you. I don't think they're. I don't. I'm not saying the Bruins are going to win the Stanley Cup. I just think the Bruins could scare some people in the first round. I think a Buffalo Boston goes 7. I think it'd be phenomenal. I think the Bruins edge them in goaltending. I think the Buffalo Sabres, people are not going to edge them in defense. I just really like Buffalo's got a lot of good pieces in the back end. That's pretty much what they have. But I think the forward group in Boston edges the Buffalo Sabres. That's the way I look at it. And that gives you a very even matchup. And we all know how Pasternak consistently elevates his game in the playoffs. We know that Charlie McAvoy consistently elevates his game in the playoffs. I would love to see a playoff Nikita Zadorov where he's allowed to get away with, he's not going to get called for all that ticky-tacky stuff for just using his body. But I would also love to see Mark Kastelik and Tanner Jeannot and that Corrali line that is pretty much saving the PK. Like Sean Corrali, people can dog him all they want, but he has been one of the best players on our PK. And one of the reasons after the the Olympic break, that the Bruins PK is good now and the penalty kill is garbage.
Right.
I mean, the penalty kill is good and the power play.
I know what you meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I got to fix my words.
No. It makes you authentic. That's what people tell me. I stumble and stammer all the time on the radio, and people say, "Hey, it makes you feel authentic." I'm like, I appreciate that. No, but no, I think to your point, especially that fourth line. Let's say you don't draw the Sabres, right? But even if you do, let's say you draw Carolina. Look at that left side of Carolina's defense right now. It's Jacob Slavin, it's Mike Riley, and it's Keandre Miller. That bottom 6 would feast on the forecheck. They would feast in a 7-game series, and they would batter them. And I feel like that's going to be the case no matter who they play. But Buffalo or Carolina, the two teams that could play right now, depending on where they fall, if they're a wild card team versus being a top 3 in the Atlantic, they would play one of those two teams, it looks like right now. They are built to wear that team down. And it's so interesting that you bring up Zadorov, because when the Bruins signed Zadorov, I talked to somebody who works out west, and his team played Zadorov's Canucks in the playoffs, and they said this guy's a menace in the playoffs. They're like he ruined our year, basically. The way he was playing, they're like, he was an absolute menace out there. He was a monster. He's like, you signed Zadorov not for the regular season, but for the playoffs, right? And so if you have that now and you get that version, he's not called for all the garbage he gets called for. He gets more big man penalties than a lot of people in this league. If you can get that, and you can get him to kind of walk that line while your fourth line is just dumping and banging at the other end. Like, this is sort of the vision that Cam and Don had for this team. They said, the P&V Bruins, right? We're going to play with aggression. We're going to play up-tempo and physical. The playoffs would allow them to be that team without being killed in the penalty box, I would imagine.
Yeah, and then you also look at that third line. Your third line is not gonna. It's gonna get unsheltered minutes. It's going to be out there, not against the tough matchups. It's gonna be like Geekie could almost feast. Like, the Bruins have some advantages, especially the two teams you mentioned. The team that would scare me would be the Tampa Bay Lightning, obviously, but just their playoff. They have a very good coach. They have everything and they played the Bruins over and over again. Playing Carolina, the Bruins have they still have that. Hey, we beat you every time we play you. And that can go a long way, because look what happens when we play Toronto. But I think Buffalo Boston would be fun. Like, that, as much as people want to dump on the playoffs, the first round of the playoffs for the NHL is probably some of the best hockey we see all year. Yes, you have some teams that shouldn't be playing each other, but I can remember, I am old enough to remember back in the day when you would have a really good team play a really bad team and just dog walk them. And it wasn't as fun as you people want to make it look it out to be. And I get people complaining on what's going on in the Pacific Division, but there's been years where the Pacific Division is better than the Eastern Conference. you're never going to have a perfect system. But, and I say this to Leaf fans all the time because they're always like, oh, we're going to play Boston. Even if you did 1-8, the Bruins, there's only one time where the Bruins and the Leafs don't meet each other in the first round. So it's as much as people want to complain about how this system is set up and how this is going to work, and it plays to the advantage, especially in the Eastern Conference right now, that pretty much you look at that Eastern Conference and you're like, anybody could win it because Florida ain't in.
Right.
So it's open.
Right. I think the biggest my biggest problem with it is it sort of de-incentivizes the regular season depending on like how the standings shake out.
Fair.
Like Minnesota and Dallas have known they're going to play each other now for what feels like months, right? Like they've known that like that's our first round matchup, and it's good that you can build your trade deadline to try to address that one team, and but it can get a little tedious, right? 82 game season, you don't want your fans checking out. I think that's something that I think I'd be mindful of. At the same time, though, like the thing I don't like about it more than anything else is more your first round's a banger, right? Like I totally agree with you. The first round's awesome. What's it look like? What's it look like in round 3? Right. And I think that's been the problem with the Eastern Conference is that the Atlantic has been so good that whoever wins the Metro bracket in round 3, you're not picking them. You're going to pick the team that's in the Atlantic, it feels like. And so, and I know I know that Tampa and Florida has done a lot of the heavy lifting there in the Atlantic bracket, but that's the one thing I don't like about it is that we get great first rounds, we get good second rounds, and then sometimes we get duds in the third round because the brackets can be a little skewed, right? And listen, I wouldn't be surprised if Vegas or Edmonton turns it on in the playoffs and they get there and then we get a good third round in the West. But that's my chief concern with this format is that it gets watered down as it goes along, which I don't want, because then it's like, do I want to watch Carolina, Florida, or do I want to go outside? It's 75 degrees out today. Like there is that part of it that I think the NHL should be a little mindful of. I still love 1-8, but I think there's no doubt that your first rounds are phenomenal, right? And if there's ever a time to get a good first round, like it's the nights where there's 3 games on and you can go boom, boom, boom. At 7 p.m. to 12:30 in the morning, I'm watching hockey. What's better than that, right? But that's my only problem with the with straying away from 1-8 is that I feel like it gets a little watered down the deeper you go, but not every year is the same as you mentioned. Some years it can be great. Some years it's like, this would have been the same thing if we had 1-8. So who cares?
Well, I think you bring up a good point because I think everybody's a little tired of seeing Carolina Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's either Carolina or Pittsburgh. And that's not saying much, unfortunately. And if you did go to 1-8, you could have an Eastern Conference Finals of like Florida versus Tampa, which would be a juggernaut. And I think with the East, it's strong enough that if you did 1-8, but if I guess I just look at the Pacific Division and I'm like, if you did 1-8, like what does that do? Like I still would love to go back to like the Norris and be like, all right, put the Bruins in the Wild and the Red Wings and the Chicago Blackhawks. Let's mix it up a little bit, guys. Or put Bruins with the Flyers, the Rangers, the Islanders. Put that whole East Coast with the Montreal Canadiens. Put them all in the same division. Let them kick the crap out of each other. Have fun with this. Figure it out. Put Tampa and Florida with Carolina. You could rejig. And you know what? I have a funny feeling when the rumored Atlanta and KC or whatever, Atlanta and Houston or wherever they're going, Atlanta and Houston come in, they'll have no choice because the Atlanta can't have at Atlanta. It's too many teams.
Right.
So they're gonna have to finally have that Southern division of Carolina, Florida, Atlanta, and I guess Dallas or Houston,
Maybe Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville. There you go. And then Chicago might finally I would love for Chicago to come on over in the Atlantic, because then I think it would almost have a whole original 6 to it'd be fantastic.
That would be and that's another city that we were talking about, cities that it's good when they're a good hockey team. Chicago is the same thing. The Madhouse on Madison, that's the one team that, I go to Chicago a lot, and obviously you have the Cubs and you have the Bears but like the Blackhawks, when that Blackhawks team is good, Chicago has a buzz about it, man. It really does. And that's one thing that I'd love for them to get relevant again. And they have Connor Bedard, obviously, and they're a young up and coming team, but damn, if they can get good again, it's a fun fun city when that team is good and they really care the way they care out there. But yeah, I think, you know, Houston is, my understanding is that Houston has always been Jeremy Jacobs' like baby, where like he's basically said like the league's got to be in Houston. It's a huge market. We got to tap into it. Like we got to go to Houston. So Houston being the other city that is mentioned with Atlanta, and I wonder too. I wonder if Turner being such a big partner with the NHL now, and Turner Studios are based out of Atlanta. I wonder if that's played a factor here, where like they like the relationship that the league has with Turner, and they're like, we got to put something in Turner's backyard now, right? And try it again. And I wonder how it would work. I know there's a lot of northern transplants now that are down in Georgia. Maybe they care more about hockey than they did 15 years ago. And what I would also say is that the last ownership group of the Thrashers never wanted the Thrashers. They didn't care about them. They wanted the Atlanta Hawks, but they basically said you got to buy the Thrashers too, and so they just had it. They didn't care about it, right? What would a meaningful, caring ownership group down in Atlanta do for the NHL? We're a long way away from that, I know, but I agree with you that like you'd have to bring back the Southeast Division, right? And would Washington be in that again? I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, they have to because Washington pretty much. I didn't know this until I went to Baltimore once. Washington's pretty much in the South.
It is, yeah.
You might as well because they practice in Virginia.
Yep. Yeah. And getting a cab or an Uber there, and you're going to hear the deepest Southern accent you've ever heard in your life. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm in DC. And then they're like, no, this is the deep South. And you're like, oh, wow. Okay. That's Northern, but all right. Like it is a really interesting city in that regard.
But as someone who's like, spoiler, I was born in Atlanta. Well, my dad was playing for the Flames, so like they've had hockey there like 46 years ago. I really just aged myself there, but my dad told me that when they played in Atlanta, the fans were great.
Mhm.
They wouldn't pack the place. He's like, all anybody cared about out there were the Braves and college football.
Yep.
He's like, they don't give. He's like, college football rules
Mhm.
and the Atlanta Braves rule, and everything else is just there. He says people like go to the Hawks games just to be seen, but he was like, that's just the way it worked back then. And I was like, okay. And then from what I understand about the Atlanta Thrashers, I heard the same. Like they just didn't care.
Right.
They didn't try. They didn't try to make it work, and it probably should have worked on the last one. The fact that they went to Winnipeg tells you a lot. Like
Right.
Winnipeg, they still didn't even really have an NHL arena, but they're playing and they sell out the games. But at the same time, it's only 17,000 people. They need a little bit more. I think you're right about Turner and TV because that's Gary Bettman's thing. Like as much as people want to dump on Gary Bettman all the way, and I didn't know we were going to get into this whole conversation, but
No.
I kind of brought us there. But he's done a great job growing the game. As a Canadian, I love the NHL. I love everything about hockey. I grew up in hockey. That's all I've done my whole life. My daughter plays hockey. I'm at the rink 4 to 5 days a week. I know you guys are too. I seen you and Connor's post every time you're up in the you post food and he posts the popcorn and then the arena. But
Yeah.
It's very interesting how well Gary Bettman has grown the game. Like the best thing that ever happened in the NHL was Wayne Gretzky being traded to the LA Kings and then Gary Bettman being the commissioner of the NHL. These two things are the catalyst for the reason why the game of hockey is so popular in the United States. I have to give the guy credit. I have to.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And I feel like with what the NHL has done, they have often looked at the NBA and said, well, the NBA does this, and Bettman, I believe, came from the NBA.
He did.
And he said, okay, then we can try our version of this, or we can tweak things this way and make it so. One thing that the NHL has not done that the NBA does, and I hope they never do, is the play-in tournament. That's the only thing I want to avoid.
The worst.
I want to avoid the play-in tournament because I think basketball, the frauds will out themselves. Hockey, if you got a hot goalie for a 48-hour window, okay, now 82 games have gone down the drain. Like that, like I think hockey has a bit more variables than say the NBA does, right? Where if a team is bad, a team is bad. In hockey, you could have a random third liner go off for a hat trick, and all of a sudden now they're in the playoffs, and it's like then you might walk into what you're talking about, where now the new 8 seed is not really the 8 seed. They're the 10th or 11th best team in their conference, and they get walked in 4 games. You don't want that either. And so it's a fine line, but I do think that, yeah, Bettman's been, I mean, as someone who's gone down to Tampa and gone down to Florida for playoff series, I'd never envisioned the buzz being the way it is down there. And that's something that Bettman had a huge hand in, right? Like building these teams up and making sure that they had stable ownership and that the owners were coming in were about winning and about building a real team, and it's what they didn't have in Atlanta. It's what they didn't have in Arizona. The guy wasn't paying hotel bills, which is crazy to me that that guy was allowed to own a team, he's made sure that they have stable ownership and that the teams are not there just to, collect the money from the TV deal or whatever. Like they are actually building, right? And I think that's been really impressive, and it's gonna be part of his legacy. He has some frustrating parts of his legacy for sure,
100%.
but what he's been able to do with the league and the growth, that you got to give him credit for. Absolutely.
So we've been talking about the future of the NHL somehow, but I want to talk about the future of the Boston Bruins because a certain person named JamesHagens, I don't know, not many people care about talking about him, but he played his first pro game, and now he is officially, I guess we can say it without saying it, he's officially a Boston Bruin because as soon as he touched that ice, he can't go back to BC, and I really doubt he's going to go play in the KHL or the Swiss League next year. So we all watched 2 games of hockey last night, but conveniently it kind of worked out because most of the time that the intermission was on, you could watch the period of the Providence game. What'd you think of JamesHagens' first game?
Interesting for sure. Definitely you can see why that they're sending him down there. The physicality obviously is going to be something he has to adjust to. He's going to have to sort of, I think, maybe carry that team more than you envisioned. You can kind of tell watching him last night that he's playing with players that, and I mean this like respectfully, like are not as naturally talented as he is. There were some openings that were not seized by his line mates or on the power play. But the skating game, as advertised, the movement with the puck on his stick, I think as advertised. But, I think you see the promise right away. He had a great zone entry on the power play. I thought phenomenal skating work and vision and what have you. And that's why he's going to be in the NHL is the skating, the vision, the offensive instincts. Everything else he's going to have to work on, and he will work on it. But, no points to show for it. But I think you see a little bit of the promise there with the skating game and his ability to create, something out of nothing on certain occasions. And so I do feel like it was a good game despite not having a point, and you're seeing the vision here. It's just how long do those details, as Don Sweeney put them, how long do those take to work into his game? And, can the production perhaps outweigh the details between now and game 82 or game 73 down in Providence, whatever it is, between now and then? That's what I kind of want to find out.
Oh, well, I feel those details are burning a hole in his pocket, but I was just, I did laugh at Don Sweeney's comments about it's up to Marco Sturm and it's about the details we have to get. And I'm like, well, he says this about everybody. Push comes to shove. I'll say this right now. After watching JamesHagens, yes, I thought he was coming back a little early. I thought he was overcompensating in the defensive zone, and I was okay with that. When I started seeing it, I think the penalties at the beginning of the game did not help his game at all.
Right.
Like it gets you want to get out there, you want to get your legs going, and then you get stymied and you're not getting on the ice. And totally understandable why he doesn't go out on the penalty kill. But I thought as the game progressed, he got better and better and better. He looked a little, I wouldn't use the word lost, but I would think out of sync is a better word to describe it in the second period. I thought the third period I'm not going to use the word dominant, but he just looked better than everybody else on that team besides Matthew Poitras. I am dumbfounded why they just haven't put the two together. Like the fact that they put the line that he was on at the beginning, I'm just like, what are we doing? Like it didn't even make any sense. It didn't seem like the right fit. Like Merkulov, Blumel, I know he's offensively gifted, but Hagens is too fast for those two.
Yes, 100%.
He's just too fast. And it didn't make any sense for him to be on a line with that. Like, I get it. Brown gets a lot of goals going to the net and going to the dirty areas, but Hagens is already in the zone for like a minute and a half, and those guys are just huffing gas coming in. We saw what happened with Blumel when he tried to come into the NHL this year. He just wasn't fast enough. The pace isn't there for him. And it's unfortunate. Like he's a good skater, but he's not fast enough. So I'm hoping, my hope with Hagens is, it's going to take 4 games till we really know what the Bruins have got with him in the AHL. No one can turn overnight. I know players can score in their first game in the NHL and all that. That stuff happens, but many players score in the first game and don't do anything after the fact. I think I would love to see Hagens on the wing with Matthew Poitras. I just think that they could do a lot together because Poitra's probably the most creative guy on that team that's not named JamesHagens. So if you're going to let 2 guys be creative, and I get maybe not wanting to do that, but you have You're making the playoffs in Providence. Like,
Right.
try it out. But I was curious. I did like to see that he did take a draw and he was strong on that draw. I went back and watched it, and I liked the way he was as in anticipation, but he won the draw and then still held up the man. And a lot of guys don't do that. A lot of guys nerves, but I just thought I saw a lot of nerves out there with James Hagens in that first game.
Yeah, it's understandable too. And to your point about the penalties, like one of the only times I've ever seen Patrice Bergeron legitimately angry was a preseason game. They were trying to make the Marchand, Bergeron, Anders Bjork line happen. And there were so many penalties that Bjork could not get on the ice because of all the penalties. And after the game, Bergeron's like, it's the preseason. We got to get chemistry. Like, why? Like, why are we calling 5 penalties in the first 10 minutes of the game? Like we're trying to build chemistry here. We need to be out there together. Like, we need 5-on-5 play. And so to that point, like, you can see, like, if it's your first game or you're developing chemistry, you don't want penalties, right? You want to be able to play the game 5-on-5 and find out what you need to do and what you need to adjust and kind of go from there. And so it never helps the player, right? Especially one who's not going to be on the PK like Hagens. But to your point, working backwards about like the faceoff, it's important for that to happen because I still think the long-term vision is him at center. Like,
Yes.
he might break in as a winger, but you look at where you are organizationally and what your glaring needs are, he's got to be a center for your team. And so I think to have some success right off the bat in that position or in that role, it's huge. And you hope he builds on it. Yeah, I would like a nice, like, this was a good getting your feet wet kind of game. I would love a nice 2-goal, 1-assist game, or a 1-assist, 1-goal, 2-assist kind of game. His next time out, it's kind of like, all right, you know the league now, you know what you got to do. Now show us what you can do offensively. I think that's like the natural next step for him to really kind of make this discussion, I think, interesting for the Bruins and for the P Bruins. You know, he's had some production everywhere he's gone, right? And people have kind of told me that he's a bit of a slow build guy. All right, well, now that he has the game under his belt, what's the next step here? Do we get a nice, 1-goal, 2-assist game? Do we get a 3-point game? Like, I think that's the next step for him now that he knows what the league looks like and he knows what he has to do to be an impactful player. And I agree with you. I'd like to see him with some more skill guys. I feel like this is something that, to your point, Providence has a very good team. They have been winning games. There's no point in making lines that are like best to win that night. You're in the playoffs. You're good. You're good. So just do what you can to get his game going offensively while also not completely sacrificing the details there.
I think the Bruins' idea is that James Hagens is their future 1C, and right now, Fraser Minton is their future 2C. We kept saying 3C, 3C, 3C. I think he has shown me, like, heck, he's the next jersey I'm going to get. If I'm going to get a Boston Bruins jersey, because I love the way he plays the game. But I think the Bruins, not only is the fact that everybody's talking about that Carlo trade this week on national television everywhere, which is just hilarious after the Leafs played the Bruins, but the Bruins hit gold with Fraser Minton. And now if Hagens can be what we all expect him to be, and I think he still looked better than most of the guys on the ice last night, the Bruins could be laughing in the future.
Oh, 100%. I do feel like with Minton specifically, like, they identified this guy right away as like a character fit, the work ethic. Like, he kind of fit what they were trying to do. I think in terms of like building their team, and they've been 100% correct. So you give their pro scouting and their amateur scouting team a lot of credit for that. And if that allows Lindholm to slide down into a third line center role, which is we all kind of envisioned for him at a certain point, like, you're feeling better, right? You don't love paying a third line center all that money, but perhaps that age is better than we think, right?
Well, a
Perhaps
cap's going up to like 130 million. It'll be fine.
Right. And so there is that sort of caveat there. But yeah, I think you've kind of found, and it's interesting because I do think that they, I talked to a player personnel guy about the draft that the Bruins had a year ago, and he said you draft William Moore after you draft James Hagens. Well, it's like, okay, well, what if you already have a William Moore type with Fraser Minton? You know what I mean? Like, you get that safe, dependable guy right behind him, and that can really kind of change the dynamic of your organization. But that's kind of what it was said to me. If you draft James Hagens, knowing what he does and knowing what he doesn't do, you got to have a good, strong center who can do it all kind of behind him. And so I think that's, I mean, listen, if their 1-2 punch is Hagens and Minton, I think you're going to be in a good spot. I think you're going to be naturally in a good spot. And it kind of reminds me a little bit, and this is the high end. I completely acknowledge it. But like Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. Like, I like what they do in Jersey because I think you have the yin and the yang there. You have the offensive guy and you get the steady two-way guy. And again, that would be the ultimate high end in terms of production and level of impact. But I love going, if they're Bergeron and Krejci, I'm happy with that too.
Exactly. I think that it's funny. Someone Lauren put out a tweet, and it kind of got caught up here in Toronto, and they talked about it, how the Bruins went from Tim Thomas to Tuukka Rask to Jeremy Swayman. We could probably throw a mark in there, and they got embarrassments of riches. And now they're going to possibly go, and this is possibly, I don't want to get ahead of myself here. They're going to go from Krejci, Bergeron to Minton and Hagens.
Right.
And having Dean Letourneau up in that top six on the wing. Because let's be honest, he's going to be a winger, and he's going to be a strong one. Like I don't think Boston's thinking he's going to be a center.
No. I think the lessening the skating burden on him, I think would probably suit him really well. I don't think, like, maybe you can do it, but I think ultimately you're going to get the most out of him if he's playing on the wing. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So, well, I want to ask you this. If Hagens has that one goal, 2 assist game, and say he backs it up with maybe another one or just a very strong outing when we watch it, do you call him up?
I mean, I do. I'm not as. I think the details and the little things and the things that the Boston Bruins worry about, I don't say they shouldn't worry about them. I feel like you have a better landing spot for him now than you would maybe any other year. You're getting great production out of the second line, like we've talked about. You have Minton and you have Pastrnak on the top line, and they're producing. You're really only asking him to come in and play in the third line with Lindholm and Geekie.
Which is huge, which is awesome.
Right. That's a great landing spot for a younger player. And then you're saying, hey, play on the power play too. Help us with some zone entries. Help us just create more on the power play. You can't ask for a better situation to drop a top prospect into, in my opinion. I just feel like you're not asking him to save your team. You're not asking him to carry you on a deep playoff run. You're basically saying, hey, help us out. And then next year, we've already checked off boxes 1, 2, and 3. So now you're in a better spot to be, a more impactful player. I just feel like that's something that I don't want to say it's overrated, like the details, because they're not. You need to be able to play in the NHL, but the system and the structure you have right now, and considering that you already turned the puck over a lot, like I don't know. I'm not really worried about that. It's just another guy turning the puck over. Whatever.
Yeah, like they're not a good defensive team. Like I did laugh. Like when he said it, one, I didn't believe him because as someone that's been around the Bruins organization, literally the first time I ever was on the ice was at Boston Garden. That's all I've done. That's all I've known is this organization. I have never known that the coach gets to make the decision when a top prospect gets to play or not. But that's news to me. From my knowledge, on any team or even in the Bruins, the GM and the president decide who gets called up and who gets sent down, and the coach just decides who's in the lineup. Plain and simple. But maybe I think what he's really actually saying is if Sturm says, hey, we need something else. Like we're not getting what I need from, like that third line. I just feel like it screams saying, hey, like Reichel, he had that good first game, and yeah, he looked all right, but like, I think that's where it comes into play when Sturm says to him, I don't know if he's going to cut it. And I do think the Boston Bruins are one injury away up in their forward group, but before Hagens is in this lineup. Like I think him playing the way he played last night tells me he can skate in the game. And I'll so I'm blue in the face think that skating is the most integral part of a player in the NHL. And he skated better than most guys in that game last night in AHL. He looked like a better skater than almost everybody on that ice.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, right? I think maybe 15 years ago, we're worried about his body withstanding the physicality and whatnot. But like, if you can skate now, that's your ticket to a roster spot, and that's your ticket to staying in this league. There's a reason why guys are getting run out of the league now at 31 years old, because their skating is not up to par. If you can skate, you can play, and you can play for a long time in this league. And so, we got calls yesterday or 2 days ago. I was on the radio, and people were saying, well, he's too small. He's too small. And I'm like, are we watching the same game? Because like I'm watching Cole Caulfield score left and right, and he's like 5'5". Like I don't think 5'10" and 190 is this impossibly small, skater. And the Bruins, I would also say, built a roster to have a softer landing spot for guys like JamesHagens. That's why they bring in Tanner Jeannot. That's why they bring in Zadorov. That's why they have Kaslik. That's why they bring back Sean Corrali, so that when a player comes up, it's not, all right, you got to be in the D zone and you got to get hit and you got to do this, you got to do that. Like, no, you've kind of built this roster so you can bring in a guy like this without, overtaxing him or wearing him down to a nub. And so I feel like that's something that they should be mindful of. And the other part of it too is like, listen, I think we're all surprised with this team and what they've been able to do. I think you'll be kicking yourself though a year from now if you have delayed JamesHagens' development to give minutes to Lucas Reichel in March 2026. Yeah. It's not a knock on Reichel, but like one's a long-term part of your core, and the other one was a late trade deadline acquisition for a 6th-round pick.
For a guy that played with Marco Sturm, and Marco Sturm was like, oh, I liked him in the Olympics, so let's try him out.
Right.
Like, I get all that, and I agree with you because I look at what Hagens could possibly bring to that line is he adds more gas to that line. It would be like, all right, cool. Hagens is a smarter hockey player than Lucas Reichel. I think it's easy for me to say that even after watching the one game or even watching his games in BC. So you could be like, hey, Lindholm, your job now is just to play defense.
Right.
Hagens, your job is to do whatever you want, but feed that puck to Morgan Geekie. What better way to learn how to play the details from a guy that's pretty much all he can do now in Lindholm is details. Yes, he scored, but like he's a details guy. And he's good at it. And then, hey, you know how you're high hockey IQ, Hagens, and you're really good at passing the puck? Well, why don't you feed it to a guy that 9 times out of 10 puts the puck in the back of the net every time you give it to him?
Right.
There's nothing more that's going to teach you and give you that experience in the game and teach you the NHL game unless you play in the NHL game. And that was one of my biggest takeaways from watching him last night. He was faster than everybody. His pace was already better. The amount of times that he got back into his own zone and was the back check, and I was like, wait a second. He is not a defensive guy, but he's first one back because he's just faster than the rest of them.
Right.
So I found that very interesting. And I think that JamesHagens, this is just my prediction, that he is going to force them. He's going to force his way in this lineup because the way he talks, the way he's already great talking to the media and such. And that does go a long way because it shows his maturity. I think he's forcing his way in this lineup sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I mean, he should, right? And I feel like, I feel like they don't want to burn that first year. I feel like that's a big thing for them, but I don't care about that, to be honest with you. I really don't, because I feel like if at the end of that first year you're paying him, but then it's worked out then. If you have to pay him at the end of that entry-level deal, then you should be very happy with what he's done, right? And you draft these guys kind of knowing that they're going to want the first year burned right away, right? Like it's kind of part of the deal, and so I do feel like if he forces their hand, they shouldn't be worried like, oh, what about the entry-level deal? What about burning that first year? It's like, who cares? If it helps you now, it helps you now. And, the other part and I said this on Twitter the other day, like, David Pastrnak came up, and when he got to the playoffs in 2017, he realized, a little bit harder to score in the playoffs. Teams close quicker. It's more physical. It's whatever. If I can fast track JamesHagens to learning that and getting used to that speed, I want him to do that. I want that to happen because I think we agree. Like we just talked about it. Like this team could go on a run or they could lose in the first round. Right now for the Boston Bruins, I think this is a lot like 07-08. And you want to find out who is part of the core, who's a playoff performer, and who's not. Because if you find out, okay, this guy is a little bit smaller, but he produces in the playoffs, like, he's locked in now, right? Or this was got to improve on in the playoffs. Like you kind of know. And that's how we all found out that David Krejci was a big game player. It was like, oh, wow, he's good. He's good in the playoffs. This is great. Any younger player, I want them getting this experience now. I just do, because I just feel like it's super important. And I'm a firm believer in you got to lose before you win. And if I can find out who my best losers are right now, and like who looks the best despite a losing effort, I think it might make my decisions down the road a little bit easier for me to palate.
Yeah, I agree, especially the way the NHL is working now. The NHL has become a more speed and skill game. And yes, in the playoffs, there are physicalities. And yes, the Bruins are a physical team. But if Hagens, you're going to want to know if he can do it or not, and he's the future of your team, you're only signing him to a league man. At the most, I talked about it in the previous video, like you're just paying him just over $3 million with bonuses. I understand you don't want to burn a year. And from my understanding, Hagens is apprehensive. His camp's a little apprehensive in burning his first year as well. So I just think after last night, if I see the same skating, and I see everything the same from him every single game. I just don't know how the Boston Bruins keep him out of this lineup, especially if, say, the Bruins beat the Minnesota Wild and they gain a little bit of more space here.
Mhm.
If you're Don Sweeney, you're going to say to Marco Sturm, because that's what I think the conversation is. You're going to go to Marco Sturm and say, I think I'm going to bring him up. Do you think you can throw him in the lineup? And Marco Sturm's either going to answer yes or no. And that will be it's not going to be Sturm's decision because it's still Sweeney going to him and saying, I'm going to put him in the lineup. I think if Lucas Reichel has another game where he's just there, because I just felt he was just there last night. He was better in the first period, and then as the game got on, as the game got chippier and tighter, Lucas Reichel kind of faded into the background, unfortunately. And that's nothing against Lucas Reichel, but I just think we probably will see JamesHagens sooner rather than later this year, especially the way the team's going.
I think it just makes all the sense in the world. It just does. And you know, you sort of you have to ask yourself, I think if you're the Bruins, like if you can't risk the chemistry or how tight the standings are to bring him in, it's like, then why draft the kid? Like like players are never going to be finished products when you draft them. It's your job to bring them along and develop them on the fly. We've witnessed hands-on the job learning from Mason Lohrei for about 2.5 years now. I think it's made him a better player. I don't think him putting up gaudy point totals in the AHL would have benefited him as much as being in the NHL, sometimes playing top pairing, sometimes playing secondary pairing, having to kill penalties on occasion, having to quarterback a power play. Like, I feel like that has helped bring him along to the player that he is today versus just being in the AHL and being a 60-point defenseman. Like there's levels to this in terms of development, right? In terms of what is better and what is just simply window dressing or wasting a player's time. And I don't want to call the AHL a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. But if you have a player who is so clearly better than everyone he's playing with, right, to the point where maybe he can't drag them along because they don't keep up with him, then you have to ask yourself, what is this player doing down here? And I think that's a fair question.
I agree. And I have a funny feeling we're going to find out very, very soon. The Bruins play the next game on Friday against Minnesota. Providence plays this weekend, right? So
Saturday, Minnesota, Sunday, Columbus, and then the Bruins always have like a 3-3 every weekend, it feels like.
And shout out to Flow Hockey, by the way, of letting everybody watch the JamesHagens debut for free. That was huge. Honestly, I checked out their YouTube before the game even started. They almost had like 2,000 people waiting. Like, so smart, so smart. I'm sure they're like, please, 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 Hagens, stay in Providence for the rest of the year, because that arena, the Thunderbirds or whatever they want to call themselves, that arena was packed with Bruins fans last night. Wanted to watch JamesHagens. That was the talk of everybody wanted to go to see that game. The amount of everybody watching the Bruins game last night, everybody was dual screening to be able to watch 2 hockey games. It's great for hockey. It's phenomenal. The last thing I want to talk to you, Ty, because I can't have you on the show without asking you, why is it that you have a goalie this year where I live in Toronto and they keep talking about how he should be in the Vezina conversation? Elliot Friedman said it like pretty much every podcast in the last little bit, how much he talks about Jeremy Swayman, but yet the fan base continues in this city to dog, and I won't say all, but a huge, maybe the loudest majority. Oh, that's what's called it. People, why is it that in the city of Boston, no matter what the goaltender does, he just isn't good enough?
It's a great question. It's a debate that I've had for 15 years of my career now. I just feel like people have been, listen, Boston hockey caught fire again in the early or the 2010s, around there, early 2010s, when Timmy Thomas came in and was doing Timmy Thomas things, making miracles, carrying the 2010-2011 Boston Bruins from start to finish to a championship. And because of that, you thought that was the norm. You thought that was the norm and not just a once in a lifetime kind of season, a once in a lifetime achievement. And, then Tuukka comes in. Tuukka's a great goalie too. Technically sound, has a 930, wins a Vezina, and
it's going to probably go into the Hockey Hall of Fame this year with Patrice Bergeron and piss a lot of people off.
Right. And so you kind of, it looks so easy for these guys, right? And it's not easy. Goaltending is not easy. And I just feel like because of what Tim Thomas did and because of how that completely skewed the expectations of what a goalie should be in the NHL, I feel like a lot of Boston sports fans, they think that's the norm, and it's not the norm. And I would honestly argue that the New England Patriots being the Patriots for 20 years and Tom Brady going 14-2 and winning a championship and again making it look easy made people think that winning championships is easy and to have elite level play is easy. It's not. It's not. And I think as it relates to Swayman specifically, there are people that were turned off by the contract talks, which I was never in that camp. I think if a player wants to get paid, that's their prerogative. That's their right. They should get paid. And I think especially after the playoff that he had, that Bruins team loses in the first round of Toronto had it not been for Swayman. Swayman was incredible in that playoff series. I thought he was good against Florida as well. But, this idea that he has, people in Boston said, oh, he had one good playoff series. It's like, well, yeah, he's good when it mattered. That counts for something. You should pay that guy. And it's the one thing he did that Linus Ullmark didn't do. Linus Ullmark was a great regular season goalie, but in the playoffs, he never really had that next gear. Not a knock on him, but he never quite had it the way that Swayman had it. And so you pay for the X factor. You do. You pay for the elite performances when they matter most. And I feel like people now maybe are starting to see it, but I think that Swayman's the podcast tour he did in that summer, wanting the contract, the comments that he made. I think the way that he speaks sometimes can maybe bother some people, but I got to be honest, man, I don't care about that. To stop the puck, right? And he's been doing that at an incredible clip this year, and I think people now maybe are starting to see it, but it's like Philly Jr. here with goalies. The Flyers for years always had the problem with goalies, right? They were always getting killed. I feel like Boston's become a little bit like that in some fashion because of what they expect and what they saw the last time they were all at their absolute happiest, which was 2011.
Yeah, because I find it funny because here in I hate saying it, but Toronto is a hockey hub. That's all we have. There's 3 radio stations. All I can guarantee if I turn it on right now, you're listening to hockey. That's all people talk about here. There's no talk. The Blue Jays will get in there. The Raptors barely. We don't care about football here. Well, there are people, but I would say majority don't. So this majority of the talk is hockey. And the amount of people that have told me, man, you guys are so lucky you have a guy like Swayman. I'm like, oh man, if you only knew how many times the fan base just can't stand this guy. And I'm like, I don't care what he says either. I find it very interesting that we always say to these players need more personality. They've got to people make fun of McDavid for those photos and doing what he does. And I'm like, and then Swayman actually has personality, God forbid, believes in himself, because that's all he's doing. He's talking positive about himself and he talks positive about his teammates, and they dog him. And I always found it funny because everybody's like, well, his teammates hate him. And then the fact that the amount of times, and I'm sure you're the one in the locker room, the amount of times that his teammates have come out to defend him, do people not get it? He's loved in that room.
Absolutely loved. Yeah.
He is 3rd in goals saved above expected. And Tuukka Rask, when he said what he said on TNT, was 100% meant for Jeremy Swayman and the Boston Bruins fan base. Not even a little bit. He sat there and he was like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to blow things up, because he knows.
Yeah.
So Jeremy Swayman is 3rd in goals saved above expected in the NHL right now. The only people above him are Ilya Sorokin, who's, if he's not the Vezina winner, I don't know who is, but Logan Thompson, who's having a good year. But Swayman is 28.3 goals saved above expected. That literally means he's pretty much winning hockey games for the Boston Bruins, people. He has played so good. And I will say this, because I have been a Corpy denier. He plays well enough to win you hockey games right now. And he's been doing it since January. And he hasn't. Usually Korpisalo has one good month.
Yep.
He has played well enough to win the hockey game for a couple months now. He is playing probably his best goaltending in his career right now. I think it's safe to say, because considering how bad the Bruins are defensively in front of him, in the first period, in the first 8 minutes last night against Buffalo, I got scared for a little bit because I saw the exact same thing that was happening against Toronto. The amount of odd man rushes, the amount of high danger chances. What was that game a couple of games ago? Swayman, you put it out there. Swayman had 15 or 14 high danger chances against. Yeah. They still won the hockey game.
The Detroit game. Yeah. Credited with, he went 14 for 14 on high danger opportunities.
That's crazy.
It's nuts. But that's been their MO this year. They've had so many games where they have surrendered 10 plus high danger shots against, which is just too high a number. Like you got to get that down to 5 or 6, maybe 8, at the very most, but like you got to get that number down. Yeah, Korpisalo, this is the best he's looked since probably when he was in LA. In LA, LA was so tight defensively. They didn't allow a lot. They didn't allow a lot of shots. They didn't allow a lot of high danger. Their slot chances were way low. So, if you compare that, right, to your point, probably better hockey because he doesn't have that stability that he had in LA, right? It is more high danger rubber being thrown at him. And yeah, I agree. Like Swayman is probably, like, I think if I were to handicap the voters right now, it's probably Vasilevsky, just because what he did before the Olympic break, he was phenomenal.
Sorokin's so damn good though.
Then Sorokin, and then Swayman. It's like Swayman and Philip Gustafson, maybe behind him as well. Like those guys, I feel like are battling for the number 3 nomination right now, just based on how these things tend to go.
So right now in the NHL, the Winnipeg Jets have given up the most high danger chances in the NHL. The New York Islanders are second. So what Sorokin is doing is crazy. The Boston Bruins are third.
Yeah.
They've given up the third most high danger chances in the NHL. Then Washington, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Montreal. But when I start naming these teams that are up there, like the New Jerseys, the Pittsburghs, the Calgary, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Winnipeg Jets, do you know what they all have in common? And the Washington Capitals? They're not playoff teams.
Right.
So all the teams that are up there, even in the top 20, they're not playoff teams besides the Buffalo Sabres, who are at 18, the Nashville Predators, which I shouldn't consider any of those teams over there, but like the Boston Bruins being third and sitting in a playoff spot is crazy to me.
Oh, it's nuts. And factor in too, and I know not all giveaways happen in the defensive zone, but they're also averaging the 4th most giveaways per 60 in the NHL. And so they surrender a lot of high danger chances, and they give the puck away at a top 4 clip in the NHL. The strain on their goaltenders is ridiculous. And the fact that they haven't completely wilted and they're winning games, they're willing themselves to victory, I think is incredibly, they deserve a ton of credit. I think Korpisalo has arguably played himself into a greater role outside of Boston this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I wouldn't even think twice. I would think this summer at the draft, teams are going to be calling Boston and saying, you know what, we can take him off your hands. We'll take that deal because his contract isn't bad.
Right.
And he's got one more year.
Right. And the Bruins may have a need to maybe finally give DiPietro a look, just because if you're the goalie of the year in the AHL in back-to-back years and you're under 30 years old, I feel like you've kind of earned the look. But I also would say that I like DiPietro a lot. Small guy, like he's a small goalie, and there's not many goalies in the NHL that I know. He's listed at 6 feet. He's like 5'11". He's 5'10", 5'11". All these guys, their heights are juiced, but he's like legit under 6 feet. There's only, I think, 2 goalies in the NHL that are under 6 feet tall right now, and so it's a unique position in that regard, where it just feels like now it's become get the biggest guy in the world, throw him in net, and take away all the angles. So that's the one thing working against DiPietro and working for Korpisalo should he stay with the Bruins beyond this year. But I don't know how you deny a guy a chance if he's the goalie of the year 2 times in a row, which DiPietro should be again this year for the Providence Bruins. And so it's a really unique spot, but they are staying afloat right now because of their goaltending, which wasn't the case a year ago. And it's the biggest reason why they are in the spot they're in right now, is that they are getting fantastic goaltending more often than not from either Swayman and or Korpisalo. Korpisalo, as you mentioned, between the Christmas break and the Olympic break, he was phenomenal. He was battling so hard, and he gave, Marco the trust to play him, which he didn't have. Marco was kind of fading on Korpisalo a little bit right before the Christmas break. And he's really earned that back. And I do wonder, the game that we saw in Buffalo, does that reinstill that confidence that he can lean on Korpisalo? Because if you got a bad performance out of Korpisalo in Buffalo, I feel like we'd be talking about going with Swayman back-to-back Saturday and Sunday, given the importance of those games.
Well, the rumor was Kevin Paul DuPont was putting out there that there was a rumor that Swayman was getting that start in Buffalo, which I still think is crazy, because a goalie, I'll say this till I'm blue in the face, the goalie can't make a mistake in a game, and they've got to be on edge at all times. A player can make a million mistakes, and we don't say boo, but a goalie makes one flick of the wrist the wrong way, and the puck's in the back of the net, and it's over.
Sure.
So I agree with you because I do think Sturm was getting a little because he was making those comments and he started riding Swayman a little bit, a lot like
Mhm.
Monty did in the past with Swayman, and a lot like Sacco did with Swayman last year. The amount of times where Swayman started and he shouldn't, and it was just getting out of hand at some point. They were just running him through the wall there last year. I think Korpisalo playing the way he did last night tells the rest of the team and the Boston Bruins, hey, yeah, we're good. We're gonna make the playoffs. Like that
Mhm.
was it was like a test. He gave Swayman the Leaf game. We all thought that was crazy.
Right.
But if you looked at the numbers, Korpisalo has played good against Buffalo his whole career. So
Mhm.
there he played the numbers game and he did the opposite of what everybody thought. And maybe he played the head game with the Buffalo Sabres because they got told they're getting the backup.
Yeah.
And he played great. He,
Battled.
he did because it was giveaways that put the puck on the back of the net, not the goaltending.
Right. Right. And I do feel like that back-to-back playing a goalie both games, like that is like the ultimate emergency lever. You don't want to press it. You don't want to pull it too often because it does. I mean, I feel like that was something that, for a long time with Swayman, he couldn't play 3 games in a row. Now it seems like he's kind of broken out of that. He's been good in the third straight game this year. He's been better than he has been in the past. But there's certain levels to that you don't want to exceed, right? And the other part of it too is that, like, if you're going to ride Swayman, you want to make sure that he still has something in the tank for when the playoffs begin. Because what use is it riding a guy for 11 out of 13 games, whatever it is, to the finish line, and then the playoffs start, he's out of gas? Like we saw that a lot. Like that happened with Saros a lot in Nashville. It happened with Connor Hellebuck in Winnipeg quite a bit as well, where, all right, these guys are playing the final 15 games of the season to get their team in. And then what happens? Okay, well, they lose in 6 games and they had an 875. It's like, okay, well, what use was that then? Like you got to be able to trust the backup to get you there so that your $8 million goalie is upright and playing the right brand of hockey for what he is in the most important games.
So we got 10 games left on the season. The next
Mhm.
one is we got a back-to-back coming up, so we know we're going to see Korpisalo Swayman. So out of those 10 games, do you think Sway gets 7 and
I think,
Korpisalo gets 3?
yeah, I think 7 is probably the way that they would go. Because I think they have another game. I want to say they have another game with Jersey coming up. I might be wrong on that,
But
but
like we got a back-to-back. We have a huge 2 games. So like do you think and I'm looking at the schedule now and maybe
Mhm.
this is the reason. Not only did he get the game against Buffalo Korpisalo because he knew he had to put Korpisalo in one of a huge game against Columbus this
Yeah,
weekend.
yeah. I think that's. I think you trust that Corpusalo can play well against his old team and that he gets up for that game. And yeah, because if you don't play Corpusalo in that game last night, I don't. You
He
can't
gets
go.
Minnesota. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't really. I don't know if you could go to him because you have the Thursday and the Friday off. Like that's enough time to recharge Swayman if you stuck with him for the back to back, right? I don't think that you could go to Corpusalo for either of the weekend back to backs either, or you could, but that's a long layoff, right? And
Yep.
so that's not good either. Guys want to stay in. I think anytime you give a goalie more than a full week off, it's not a good idea. Like I just, if you can avoid it, scheduling wise, it's best to avoid it, right? I know last night I think was 8 days between games, or maybe 9, but that's like the limit. You don't want to go further than that, right? And if you can't play him in the game last night, and now you're doing the weekend, now it's been almost 2 weeks between starts. That's not good for anybody.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the schedule now. So many back to back. Oh my god, this is like a gauntlet. So
Yeah.
Say we're spitballing here. Say Sway gets Minnesota. Then Columbus is Corpusalo.
Hmm.
Dallas is Sway.
Hmm.
Florida. I almost would say Florida is Corpusalo. Sway gets the Panthers, and Corpusalo gets the Lightning. Or you switch that up because it gets dicey where you have to like say Sway gets Minnesota, Corpusalo gets Columbus, and
Hmm.
Swayman gets Dallas. And then you're going to give Swayman Florida. That means Korpisalo is playing Philly, and then the next day, I mean Korpisalo is playing Tampa, and you've got Swayman for Philly on the back to back. You have to do him. He has to start the back to back like again. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Like I just look at the schedule. What else you going to do? And I think maybe that's why he got the Buffalo game because he's like, I got to line it up this way. There's not much I can do about it. Or do you give
Yeah.
Korpisalo Minnesota?
I'm probably so looking at this now. I'm going Swayman against Minnesota. I'm going Corpusalo against Columbus. I might.
See?
I might give the Dallas game. I'm going to be honest with you here. I feel like the Bruins are losing the Dallas game, regardless of who's in net. So I might make my version of a human sacrifice here and give that game to Korpisalo, and then go Swayman against Florida and Tampa, and then Korpisalo that on the back to back against Philly.
That's yeah,
I might
that
do that.
that might be smart. Yeah, I look at the schedule, and if I'm Marco Sturm, I'm like throwing things at the wall. Like, you
Right.
got to be kidding me. Like,
Well, I will say
wow.
this: they have probably had goalie coach Bob Essenza has probably already mapped this out. He's
Yes.
probably mapped this out completely,
Well,
and
Ty,
and
you and I both know he already has. They
right,
map it out months ahead, right?
right. And so I'm curious how they view that Dallas game. Do they look at that Dallas game as, hey, we're probably not going to win that game regardless. They're playing great. They're one of the best teams in the NHL. Is that a game where you throw Korpisalo out there and you kind of hope for the best? And I know that coaches and GMs and teams aren't going to say, we're going to lose that game anyway. But you kind of look at that and go, if you sacrifice that one game, but you make sure you're in a good spot against Columbus and Florida and Tampa, is that more valuable than dropping a game to one of the best teams in the Western Conference?
And in fact, the last time you played him, Sway got lit up 6-2.
Right, right. And so you look at that, and like it's almost like you can. You're not waving the white towel, but you're kind of saying, "Hey, we're up against it anyway, so may as well hope for a miracle here."
Well, I think we've covered almost everything, Ty. So thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone for always watching, clicking, and for some reason wanting to listen to my opinion. Please leave me a like. Please leave me a subscribe. Ty, let them know where they can find you when you're not talking about pizza on the internet.
Yeah, you can you can find me you can find me at 985thesportsub.com. You can also hear me on the hockey show on 98.5 The Sports Sub every Saturday morning, 9 to 11 a.m. You can watch live on YouTube, stream on our app or online, or just listen on the radio if you have one of those here in Boston. You can also find me on social media. Just search my name, Ty Anderson. I made a typo in my name. It says Andersib. Nope, that's not my name.
Honestly, that is great though. Like, it was
Yeah.
pretty good. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it.
that's what I said. We gotta be human here. You gotta make
Yeah.
mistakes. It's better for everybody. No, just search my name, Ty Anderson, SON. I'm on all the apps. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Threads. I don't update all of them as much as as much as I should, but I am on there, so you can find me there. And always happy to talk with everybody. This was great. I had a really fun time today. This was long overdue. Our schedules have just never lined up, so this was great
For years. I'm talking about, like, people don't understand. I've been trying to have a podcast with Ty for like 8 years now.
Yeah. It's just is always like I'm always running around. I'm always like, and then sometimes it's like I have a day off, but like I'm so cooked that if we do like a podcast, I'm gonna be like, yeah, man, everything's good. I'm gonna be like nodding off. I'm so tired. So like, no, I'm so happy that we were able to make this happen. We'll have to do more of it for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
See everybody next time.